How many of you got to watch the Super Bowl last weekend? How many of you are glad the season's over? Okay. Well, tonight I'm going to tell you a fun way to interact with others and a way to get to know the game a little bit better. How many of you know what fantasy football is? Okay, excellent. I get to play in a fantasy football league with several guys that I work with, and I'm going to teach you about 4 basics of our fantasy league. The first is the preseason research. Second is the draft. Third, the weekly games that we play. And fourth is our postseason poker party. So first, let's talk about the preseason research. If you want to draft a good team, you want to do your homework. Most people will start by looking at the statistics from last season. So I would look at a quarterback. I like to rank my players by position. So I'd start by looking at my quarterbacks and how many passing yards they have and how many touchdowns and how many interceptions they have. Then I would look at wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends, and I'd look at their rushing and receiving yards, how many touchdowns they have. Then I'd go to the place kickers and see how many field goals did they make last year, especially their long ones. And then I'd look at special teams and defense, and I'd rank them by how many sacks they had, interceptions, fumble recoveries, return yardage, and touchdowns. I also look at their current injuries and past injuries, their criminal history, and their attitude. For example, in the past, I would never draft Michael Vick after his dogfighting incident. On the other hand, I would draft somebody like Tim Tebow or Peyton Manning because they're great role models and have a very positive attitude. So after you've done your research, it's time for the draft. This can be done in two ways, either online or in person. And both ways are nerve-wracking, exciting, and anxiety-provoking. It feels much like your first speech in front of 1,000 people. Most teams have 8 to 12 team managers or team owners. In our league, we have 12. Each team owner would get to fill out their roster, which would consist of 1 quarterback, 3 wide receivers, 3 running backs, 1 tight end, a special teams defense, a place kicker, and 4 bench or backup players. So the way the draft would go is, the draft is, in our league, the order is determined minutes before the draft starts. So say we have a few people in our league. So say it's Tana and John and Patrick. And say that's the order that we have determined. So Tana may pick Ezekiel Elliott. He's a running back for Dallas Cowboys. And John may pick Julio Jones, a wide receiver for Atlanta Falcons. And of course, we know Patrick, he would choose quarterback Matt Ryan. Oh no, Patriots quarterback Tom Brady.
All right.
So the draft would go like this until we filled out our roster. And then when we have our rosters and our teams complete, usually the next weekend ends up being the official start of the NFL season. So we start the competition head to head. Week to week, we have teams that would go competing each other. So John and Tana might go head to head the first week, and Patrick and I might go the same week head to head. The way the points are added up, it depends on how players do in real life. So say John's quarterback throws Tana's wide receiver touchdown pass, they would both get 6 points for that. But there are also extra points involved depending on the passing and the rushing and the receiving yards that they receive. At the end of the weekend, after all the games, all of the statistics are added up for each of these players, and then there's a winner for each of these head-to-head games. After a 13-week season, we have our playoffs to determine who the best two teams are that goes to our own special Super Bowl. At the end of our season, which takes us to the third part, so we had our research, our draft, our week-to-week head games, and now we get to go to our poker party. So the end of the season, we have our Super Bowl champion. They get a chunk of change, they get to bring the food for the party, and then the loser has to bring the beer. We eat, we play, we share stories about our players and our teams, and what we would do different next time, and have a really great time playing cards. So what I've shared with you are the 4 basic parts of our fantasy league: the the research, the draft, the weekly head-to-head games, and our poker party. I hope this has given you some insight into some ways that you can have fun and make friends. Fantasy football is a great way to learn more about the game and to make friends. It's a lot of fun. It's such a rush for the week-to-week competitions, whether you win or lose. The best part is that I've gotten to know my colleagues much better, and I get to be one of the guys. Most people think that football is for guys, but fantasy football levels the playing field for us all. I hope that this has inspired you to consider playing in a league next year and having as much fun next season as I have, and maybe you can win one of these.